Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Research Lounge. This is not just another episode of Research Lounge. This is a very special and historical period for the University of Moratuwa since we are in the Research Week 2022. This is remarkable for all of us since we are here as resource persons. This is significant for our researchers since they are going to have a look at your research journey. This is crucial for all of us since we are at this scholarly forum on research we call the Research Lounge at the University of Moratuwa. Research Lounge is a trailblazing event. We have specially turned a research lounge because at this stage, we are giving direction to the researchers on how to set about in their respective fields of research. It's just like a passengers in an airport lounge waiting to go on board the plane. I'm quite sure you will have the same feeling about the experiment at this moment. I'm fully confident that what we discussed here at the research lounge is going to be helpful and beneficial on your journey of research one day. Dean FGS, Professor Aditya, sir, thank you for playing a big role in motivating us and leading us this far. This would have been a concept paper in a file cabinet without your scholarly guidance, valuable instructions, and continuous encouragement. Well, I'm very proud to open doors for today's research lounge. As I know, many of you were counting fingers until today to see our expert, weren't you? So let me introduce the first icon figure today's research lounge. She's a role model. She's a brand in our research culture. She's a well-versed, well-known person worldwide. She is Professor Mithika Vittanagi. Mithika Vittanagi is a professor in natural resources and the founding director at the Ecosphere Resilience Research Center, University of Sri Jawatanapura. She is now serving as an adjunct professor in the Institute of Agriculture, University of Western Australia and National Institute of Fundamental Studies, Sri Lanka. Her academic background covers water chemistry, environmental remediation of toxic metal, antibiotics, agrochemicals, microplastics, and waste biomass conversion. She was elected as a Fellow of the National Academy of Sciences in Sri Lanka in 2022. She is considered as the first ever scientist in Sri Lanka who was selected as the most cited researcher 2021 by Clarity. The prestigious Al-Sarafi Award from the World Academy of Science in 2020 was awarded to her. She became the chairperson of the Young Scientist Forum 2017 and chairperson of the Selection for Engineering, Architecture, Serving of the Stars Sri Lanka in 2018, and she received presidential awards for scientific publication for 10 years. More importantly, she was able to secure than 200,000 US dollars from national international grants. She is one of the leading researchers on biochar and listed in the top 10 authors who have published essay article on biochar. Further, she was listed as top 2% of the most cited scientists across various disciplines globally in 2017, 2019, 2020, and 2021. She is listed in the top 10 of the authors who published research on biochar as per this corpus. She has contributed over 225 science citation index journal articles, over 40 books chapters, and 4 co-edited books published by Elsevier. The citation record is over to 15,000 with an H index of 6. Thank you for accepting our invitation, madam. You are warmly welcome to today's research lab. So, the next resource person is Dr. Anushka Upamali Rajpaksha. Dr. Anushka Upamali Rajpaksha is a senior lecturer of applied sciences, called BSc in chemistry, special from the University of Peradeniya in 2008. MPhil in chemical sciences from the University of Peradeniya in 2012, and a PhD in biological environmental from Hamon National University, South Korea, 2015. She has an excellent background in chemistry, especially focusing on chemical kinetics, sorption, environmental chemistry, and surface chemistry. Her research approach covers the development of novel engineered designer materials as innovative solution to environmental issues, conversion of waste materials into value-added products, assessing the suitability of absorbents and their surface chemistry with respect to water pollution control. She also expertised in assessing dissolution kinetics and reaction rate modeling of solid water interaction. Dr. Rajapaksha has an excellent publication track record with over 50 CI journal articles, H-index 30 with 7,500 plus citations among those. Among those, many were published in high-impact journals. She contributed to 2 foreign patents for environmental remediation of antibiotics. She has received several awards and distinctions, including President's Award for Scientific Publication in the year 2014, 2015, 2016, and 2018, given by National Research Council, Sri Lanka. And Early Career Research Award 2021, University of Sri Chavardhanapura, as Most Outstanding Young Researcher in Physical Sciences, CVCD Excellence Award 2020 by the Committee of Vice Chancellors and Directors, Sri Lanka, and the Best Research Achievement Award 2015 from Kanwon National University in Korea. You are also warmly welcome, madam, for today's research launch. The next research person is Dr. Hasintha Vijayasekara. Dr. Hasintha Vijayasekara is a senior lecturer in environmental science at the Department of Natural Resources, Faculty of Applied Sciences, Sabaragamu University. He obtained BSc in Special Degree in Environmental Science and Natural Resources with Management from the Sabaragamu University and MPhil degree in Environmental Science from the University of Peradeniya. He was a research assistant to the Chemical and Environmental System Modeling Laboratory Institute of Fundamental Studies, Kandy. He is a recipient of the prestigious International Presidential Scholarship to conduct his doctoral studies in Australia and hold a PhD degree from the University of Newcastle. He has served as a postdoctoral researcher to the Global Center for Environment Remediation, Faculty of Science, the University of Newcastle. His teaching and research interests include developing technology to limit greenhouse gas emission, thereby mitigating global warming and climate change, understanding emerging contaminated transport in the environment, characterizing wastewater and application of nanoscale materials for their treatment. He has been involved in environmental contaminant remediation related research since 2010 and contributed to over 50 articles and book chapters through collaborating a number of world's leading scientists. During the last 4 years, he has contributed to develop research projects that attach over 58 million rupees from local and national funding agencies. He has been serving as a reviewer for more than 25 national and international journals, including the journals of Water Research, Environmental International Toxics, Chemosphere, and Science of the Total environment, and currently he serves as a guest editor of the Journal of Sustainability and editorial member for the Carbon Research. Based on the Google Scholar reports, he has over 1,600 citations for his publications. And his NH index is 21. He has been awarded the President's Award and the Merit Award for Scientific Publication from the National Research Council Sri Lanka. In 2021, he became as the Young Researcher of the Year from the Sabaragamu University. He has contributed to Sri Lankan patent on the synthesis of nano-zero-valent iron for high-strength wastewater treatment. He is a member of Sri Lanka Association for the Advancement of Science. Dear Sir, you two are warmly welcome to this very special occasion. Dear Madam and Sir, we love to walk with you through your research journey. Research Lounge is yours to share your research life with us. Madam, if you look back upon your research life, would you mind sharing with us the experience of the cradle or birth of it? So, I respectfully invite you all to share your valuable thought with our researchers.
Thank you very much for the kind invitation and also for the long introduction. I would like to thank Professor Ajit Alvis, Dean FGS, for launching this kind of a forum to gather more information, gather some experiences from the researchers here in Sri Lanka or in abroad to the undergraduates and graduate students. That is very helpful. During our times, we didn't have such these kind of forums to develop our whatever the things that we need to learn from the expert members, expert researchers, to gain stuff from them. But now the forum has been set up like that. Because of the technological advancements, many people can listen to these things. So the gathering information and gathering experience from other people have been very prominent nowadays. So I would be very happy and thankful for all of you to arrange in this kind of a forum for the undergraduates and graduate researchers. If I talk about myself, I didn't want to be a researcher. During my school time, I was just a basketball player and wanted to be a basketball coach. Then later on with my parents, I couldn't go through in that line. So I had to choose going to a university, whether I like or not. That is the way the culture in Sri Lanka, right? So then when I entered into the university, when I had to list the universities in the application, I actually listed the topmost universities, and then I got selected to University of Rupuna, and then to later on to University of Sri Jawatanapura. But all of them have basketball. So if I go into basketball, then I would graduate as a general degree holder, definitely, because my focus is into something else. So I chose a university which doesn't have basketball at that time. Later they started basketball, and then I joined. So that was the University of that was the Sabaragamu University of Sri Lanka, and I was the second batch, in that university. So we had only 30. So we were in very rural area, Buttala, which takes about 8 hours for us to go. So you can hardly come back home, because of that distance. and most of the buses are coming at night. So traveling is a bit hard. So we had to stay there. And we didn't have many lecturers. So most of the lectures were done in the weekends. But the most important thing in that faculty was they had a huge library, which was really good. And because it was a new university, they had new books. So I was in the library all the time. Not reading the scientific, the lecture notes or whatever about the lectures, but also reading National Geographic magazines and many different, even novels. So that made me to start writing in Sinhalese. So by looking at, by reading through National Geographic magazine, I thought, these information should be delivered to the general public, at least to the students, school kids. So I started translating some of these articles that have been published in National Geographic, and then I sent it to many newspapers. So that is how my writing started. And there were few novels which were, kids, and then I started translating those books too. So I have 4 books that have been translated to the kids. I mean teenagers.
That means that university period.
Yes, 3 were in the university period, and then I translated 1 when I was doing my masters. So that is how I started, writing science towards kids, especially translating articles. But these books were novels, was just translated into Sinhalese. 1 got an award for the best translation from the language department. So that is a background of how I started writing, and how I got myself going to writing. That was because we had ample time to spend, since we didn't have many lectures during our bachelor's time. So then another very important thing in Sabaragamu University, the study area that I was in was natural resources, where they had many field visits to each of the subjects. So that field visits, and also from my father's background, we were taken all the time outside to the various different places in the country to see the country around. So that gave me another opportunity. So I love field visits. Even now I'm going into field with my students. I never allow, let them go alone. Because from the field we can learn many different things. Even to talking to people, talking to the general public, we can get more information for us to start writing our articles, writing our scientific communication. So that is another thing which made me love in research, so that I can deliver whatever the information that we gather. So in Sri Lanka, we as scientists, we spend money from the general public for our own research. So whatever we are doing, we need to translate it into at least to a journal paper, so that the whole world can be benefited, right? At least. Or else we can go and translate whatever we are doing in research into general public by these kind of forums, or by school workshops, and many more. So this is just a background of my research life. So I think we can move into others.
Before that, I have a small question.
Yes.
So then actually, so when we consider the academics and our researchers complain about lack of resources. then the lack of assistance from services. Although we want to follow the model like you, so then what were the challenges you have faced during this period?
If I talk about these challenges, I may talk the whole day because that many challenges we had to face. If I tell you where I started with the challenges were during my PhD. My PhD was related to tsunami, how tsunami influenced the groundwater, contamination of groundwater, and how long it takes to replenish the aquifers, groundwater aquifers. So my field site was in Vatican. During tsunami happened in 2004, and I started my PhD in 2005. Then we had the civil war going on very harshly in from 2007 onwards. So I had to go into my field visit to collect data, and that field site was in really war related area. So I had a person who is in the village as a leader, kind of. That person helped me quite a lot. And there was a STF camp beside my field site, and they came and tried to help me because I had to put 20 wells along a stretch of 2 kilometers to see how the salt is being replenished by rainfall. So I was going into field, and sometimes he called me and tell me, you should not take this path. You have to come in a different route because of the bombing and shooting. So place one such experience that I had during my field visits, and that village and sitting close to a window. So I was thinking, okay, somebody can come and shoot me and go, then that's it, right? So that kind of a situation was there, agitation. They didn't like us because we were Sinhalese, they were Channels, but the village people, they knew me, they helped me quite a lot. So this was just an ethnic problem between, this was not an ethnic problem, but it was a problem between two groups like terrorists and the army, maybe, right? But it was not in the society. So from that onwards, I collected data, graduated data, and then I got a job opportunity as a researcher in the Institute of Fundamental Studies in Kandy. Then when we had I had the job opportunity, I went there. There was no place to sit, no table, no chair, and no lab. Only one lab we had, but that was a wet lab. We can't, I can't let the students sit there because there was where we were doing all these acid digestions and everything. Then somehow they arranged me a small room for the students to sit, and we started painting the laboratory by our own money, by our own labor. Right? So these two were there. These are my first MPhil students. I'm very proud and I'm very happy. So that is how we started our laboratory work. So we actually, I have spent quite a lot of money from my pocket to set up laboratories. Even at the University of Sri Jayawardhanapura, we didn't have a place to sit when we came there. Myself and Anushka. We were sitting in one long bench where students were sitting. And then somehow I was able to get 4 containers, 20-foot container cabins, set up as a container complex. So there we have developed our own research center called Ecosphere Resilience Research Center. And we do quite a lot of collaborative research. So that is the hardship went through. But if you are devoted, and if you can if you have a lot of strength, and if you don't mind what third parties are saying, then you can go in wherever you want to go. It's not only research, but if you want to go through to any other type of field, you will be definitely surviving and achieving a best place. But if you need to have few things, I can later talk about those things, which is very important for you to be good in whatever the field that you want to be. Not only research, even in the general life.
Thank you so much. I couldn't say thank you. So then, so we have to talk many things. Yeah. So then, sir. So then, there's a success story behind you, your research life. So then, what is the turning point in research life? May I ask?
Yes, I can simply say I met Professor Ventika. So that was the turning point because I was doing something else at the university. Actually, at Sabaragaon University for final year research project, we have to go and do some research outside. The academic members are actually encouraging us to do outside research. At that time, I went to Peradeniya University, and then I conducted a research with Professor Ben Basnayaka. And that time, I could successfully complete my research work. Then he offered me a chance to be with him as a research assistant. Then I was trying to enroll into the MPhil in biosystems engineering. But I was not happy about that program because I had to, if I registered for that, I have to conduct, I have to follow several courses. Then at that time I met Professor Ventika, and then she encouraged me to apply for a research assistant position at IFS. Then I applied and she selected me, and then I registered for an MPhil degree in environmental sciences at PGIS. So that was the turning point, and that at IFS Live, it was a nice time, and we, as she mentioned, we had to do a lot of things, not only research, we have to share, and we had to develop the laboratories and all. So that was the turning point at IFS. So, and I can remember another point in my research life when I was a first year student. One of our senior colleague, he was a MPhil student. He asked us to, myself and some other two friends, to come with him and to help for his research. So we didn't know what he's asking. Then we said, okay. Then we joined with him, and then we had to come from Buttra to Pinnavala. Then what he promised us to give 500 rupees per week and free food and accommodation and all. Then we didn't know what to do. Then the very first day he treated us with food and all, and then the next day morning, what he said, he carried us to a place where a lot of elephant dung, elephant dung, a huge amount of elephant dung was there, and then he asked us to wash all the elephant dungs. It was my first research experience at my first year. So then we had to find seeds, the seeds. Then he was trying to develop a model with a senior colleague, senior professor called Ahimsa campus from Japanese University. then anyway, it was a nice experience. I was the one who found the first seat. So others could not find the very first day. I was lucky enough, and it changed me a lot to think about the environment and how the researchers, more developing the research things, and what a kind of experience. So I still remember, and I have included that experience in my CV because I really like to memorize that thing.
Very nice story. Okay, madam. So we are happy if someone's like our works. Things we have discussed in our research paper, accept, reject, criticize, or whatever. So then I hope you wouldn't mind my asking about the techniques you use to achieve this much of citations.
Okay. Must also start with the journey I had, because we were lucky as graduate students. I had basic degree with chemistry. We had only few experiences of conducting research. But when I entered and when I joined IFS, Kenny, one of my advisor was Professor Betty. After that, I was given a task related to environmental studies, field visit with serpentine soil, and I had basic background information, but I don't know how to apply this to environmental studies. So the guidance was very important at the beginning as a research student. So we were lucky and we had great chance to learn the publication process. So we only had experiences about thesis preparation. But we didn't know about what is journal submission, journal paper, like that. But when we as students, Professor Metika was there, and what she did was encourage us to write what we were doing in the lab right after experiments. Advice was writing to a small summary. So we learn about the summary writing, and then we developed the scientific writing skills. We had many chances to expose international communities like workshops and everything. Then as students, we had chances to submit our papers. When we had chance to submit all these papers, sometimes rejections were there. So I had to submit my paper, first paper, I guess. 2-3 later, so I got rejections. So we were really disappointed, and I came to Professor Metika saying, I can't do this one because this one was rejected as the first submission. She encouraged, that's the research life, and finally we were successful, and we selected journals, and we were able to actively collaborate with others. That was one of the reasons that we are getting more citations. So the authors, if we look at our research profiles and the publications, authors are from different countries. So their communities and their research universities, they also refer our research papers. So that, I think, one of the reasons to increase our citations, and most of the publications are related to applied environmental science, the basic thing. So in that sense, those are more accessible and interesting to readers. So the citations are getting, so due to that research, due to our field, environmental chemistry would be subject which are limited to small community.
If I jump in, if you need more citations, you have to do 3 things. Very first one is you need to select a research which is emerging in the context on global science. For that, you need to read. So reading is very important. So in Sri Lanka, at the time we were in the beginning of our research life, reading is restricted because we didn't have the access to papers. Now, at least from, thanks to Sci-Hub and ResearchGate kind of platforms, we have access to many research papers. But during that time, we didn't have access. So either we need to write to the author and get down the article, or we need to read the abstract and consider, think what is in there. So most of the time we write to the author and get down paper. So very first one is we need to select a subject area which is emerging in the field of science at this context, and in the global level. So it is, in Sri Lanka we have many researchers who do quite a lot of research and do quite a good research too. And they publish, but they don't have citations much. So one thing is that because we are not going towards the global context. So global type of research is important. And then the collaborative research, multidisciplinary research. So it's very bad in Sri Lanka, even in the field of academia. So our promotions are working on on the number of authors, right? So if you have number of authors, high number of authors, you have given low marks. It should not have happened. People should have been encouraged to have large number of authors. I'm not saying like 50 number of authors, but like 5 authors, 8 authors in your paper with different disciplines and from other types of countries or collaborations, or even from the national level. So in Sri Lanka, the collaborative research is very, very big. What I think is we don't trust people much, and there are other ethical issues also, because there are incidents that we have faced. Even I have faced, many of the scientists have faced in Sri Lanka. Some are there, they steal others' ideas. So we have to be very careful, but we need a good research collaborative network. So that is another thing that you need when you go for citations. If you think about citations, increasing citations, then you have to think about those two. And then improve your writing and improve your knowledge on the publication, how the publications are happening, what are the new things that is in the publications. Because as an example, now most of the journals in Elsevier platform, they are mandatory for us to submit a graphical abstract. So we need to develop our expertise, not only writing, not only research, but also developing these kind of graphics. And some journals, they are asking about novelty statement, or some journals are there for water specifically, so they ask about water statement on water, how our research influence the water research in the world. So these are new things, and we need to be in touch in the publication community, so that only from that way that we learn these kind of new things are there. Otherwise, if you go and start submitting, then they are mandatory asking to submit a graphical abstract. So we can't right away, we can't make a graphical abstract. It needs your skills to be developed. You need to think, you need creativity. So these are very, very important. So when you become a researcher, you if you are international kind of a researcher, then that means you have developed your network, you have a collaborative group, and also you are good in other skills, communication skills, graphics. When it comes to a paper, it is not only research presentation. You need to critically present whatever you are discussing in your paper. And then you need to have good figures, good tables. So preparing figures, these are also developing, good tables means that you have developed a skill to design a good table in a paper. So these things are very important for you to develop when you become a researcher. So if you have good figures, then definitely the reviewers will be very enthusiastic, very happy about your work. So being an editor, that is how I am now looking at the papers that have been submitted into being an editor. It is also very important. So in some journals, so the editors only look at the cover letter. By looking at the cover letter, he can guess whether the quality of the work is good or bad in the paper. That is how we do. So because being an editor, you can't read all the 200 papers that is being submitted to you in a year. So these are things that you need to develop as a researcher, being a researcher. And if you are a researcher, you definitely need to be a good communicator, good scientific writer. Otherwise, being a researcher means that you will just spend time on doing experiments, that it will not be communicated to the next level, right? So as a scientist, as an engineer, one of our duties is to do research and publish research. Otherwise, the community will not be aware about what has happened in the field of science. So that is a weakness. If you are a researcher, if you are a scientist, if you do a lot of research, even for undergraduate research, right? So I get 2-3 undergraduates per semester not from the University of Sri Jayawardenepura, but from other universities. So what I do is I gather 3 of these small aspects of research to a one paper. So these are the things that you need to think about being a scientist, being a researcher. So I think they have similar kind of experiences. Everybody has different experience because you are working in different fields, different set of groups, different set of maybe journals. So publishing is very important being a researcher, and you need a lot of experience so that that will shape up your profile, shape up even the manuscript, and that will help you to get a good acceptance rate. So that is some input I would like to give in that sense.
Yes, thank you so much. Yes, sir. So the floor is open. So then you can ask any questions from our expert panelists. So
Anything else you need to add?
If we can explore the knowledge gap right after your research work, when we normally, in most of the cases, in our publication submission, at the end, in the conclusion section, we try to emphasize the knowledge gap. So we have done this much of research, and these are the findings, and the rest thing which need to be discussed. So the authors and the communities are interested about that small thing, knowledge gap, and they will try to explore more and more to lower that gap. So that is one of another reasons that our publication papers are being cited. I think the everybody in when we do research, we can try to identify that knowledge gap, and if you are not further working, so we can easily share with the journal or with our publication manuscript. So I think it is also another good point which is not highlighted and not doing by many authors. So we also try to start research by reading others' papers, and we know this is the gap, and we try to explore more and more to reduce that knowledge gap.
I would like to add a couple of points to the cover letter. Cover letter is very important, as she mentioned, because normally we prepare a cover letter just in one page. But I think now the trend is not like that. We have to give, we have to prepare a detailed cover letter. Then we can actually convince the editor to go ahead with the other process, next level. So in that case, actually, the writers or the team of authors can decide actually they can include the highlights with the graphical illustration of the research, and also their profiles. For an example, if you have five authors, you can actually add their profiles half of a page by each author. Then you can actually convince the editor that the team who have contributed to the paper is having a good value. So that's very important. Novelty statements, those things are very critical in the cover letter. So especially when we write review articles, so we have to mention those information, and then the editor would like to see those things. And also, if we focus a journal, then we can also cite articles from that particular journal. That's also your plus point when you looking for publication.
So this is just to show you an example of a cover letter that we are writing. So we, as Jacinta mentioned, we have, in here, we have 3 paragraphs. The very first paragraph, we are discussing about what the title of this paper is, and then who are the authors in this paper. So you can add more, and you can write about each of the author if you need to. And then the second paragraph will be regarding the novelty and the justification of this particular manuscript that we are writing. So we need to show the editor that this paper that we are submitting is very important for the readers of that journal. That is what we are describing from the second paragraph. And the third paragraph is, the journal is asking many different things like the word count and number of figures, number of tables, and about the, ethical statements that this is an original work and this has not been submitted to elsewhere and so on. So that information is given in the third paragraph. So that is how we prepare cover letter. So this can be different from person to person, but these are 3 main points that should be in a cover letter if you are submitting a manuscript. And there are other cover letters too, like, as Jacinta mentioned, we can write about each of the author too. So this is just an example of whatever we do in scientific writing. If you have any questions, we can discuss more. So, yeah, sure.
Thank you very much for this very useful discussion. I have a question. So, as an editor, when you get a paper, what are the key aspects you go through to decide whether you go for a guest reject or whether you go whether you are going to assign
So, being an editor, the very first thing I would like to see is the abstract. First, I go through the cover letter, but depending on the cover letter, the quality of the cover letter, I'm not rejecting the paper. But I will have a sense about what is in the paper, and also who are writing this paper, and so on, where it is coming and so on. And whether this is a review or this is a research paper or an opinion paper, because there are several number of different types of publications now. So in the very first instance, what I look at is the abstract. So in the abstract, the objective should be clear. That is the main point that I am looking at. The objective should be clear. And then the methodology should be clear. Also, the number of samples, whatever they have done should be clearly stated. And then the results in numbers, quantitative results is very important in my aspect. I'm looking at quantitative results. So at least the numbers, 2-3 numbers should be there and saying, these are the things that we have received. Then the discussion, not only the numbers, we have to say what does those number means. And then I'm going directly to the last paragraph of the introduction. That is how I screen the paper. So if the abstract passes by me, I go and look at the last paragraph of the introduction section. In the last paragraph of the introduction section, I would like to see the research gap and the justification for the study. That is very important for me to understand whether this particular manuscript is giving something novel to the community. Because research means you are developing, you are giving something new. It can be a methodology, it can be some results, but you need to highlight that in your paper. Otherwise, you will be failed, right? So that is what I'm driving my research students to read. Any research student will read like more than 50 papers for their thesis work, right? So they know the research gap, why this research is being performed. But they are not stating what is it, what is now, why is it, why have they done it? So that is very important for us to do. Justification for the study and the research gap. So we need to, in my case, I tell my students, there should be only 4 paragraphs in an introduction section. The very first paragraph, you will give a global contextual status of whatever you are working on, right? The manuscript is on. Then the second paragraph will be on what have been discussed in, what have been developed. That means the literature part, right? The third paragraph will be what have been the solutions for the problems that have been discussed, right? What are the solutions? And then last part of the latter part of it, you will discuss the disadvantages or negatives. So, if there are no papers, if there are no studies or whatever, if there are lack of studies and so on. Then the last paragraph, you will highlight the research gap and then say, because of this gap, we are carrying out this particular research. Then only you state the objectives. So that last paragraph is very, very important in a manuscript. So if I don't find that, research justification for that research or the objectives of that research, I would definitely reject the paper. If not, even if I feel like, okay, there is something new in this thing, but they have not stated, then I will go each paragraph upwards and look at, have they done any comparison and so on. So if they have done a comparison, if they have stated the literature, and if they have not stated the justification, then I would send it to the reviewers, most probably by looking at their figures, how they have presented. And one more thing is like, if you want to distinguish a paper that should go into the reviewers or not, by looking at the figures. So the figures should be nicely drawn, and there should not be more than 8 figures. Right? Normally we say 8 figures plus tables. That is the maximum any editor would like to have in a paper. If you have more, you can put them in a supplementary material. Now there is a separate section called supplementary material. You can upload whatever videos, even you can upload, right? So that will give a good indication about the experience of the author. So that is how the very first aspects that we are looking at is these things. Yeah. Any other questions?
You have discussed about the introduction part. How about the conclusion part? Like that, because usually
Yeah.
also seems to be an important.
That's very important. And no, like you have an abstract and you have a conclusion. Some authors, especially the young kids, young researchers, they think they have a sense that these two are very similar, but it is not. Abstract is just the summary of the paper. So you have the objective, you have the methodology, you have the results and discussion and the conclusion. All these are in the summary form in an abstract. But conclusion, you should not have all these things. That is a very, very different thing in conclusions. As Anushka mentioned, conclusion should have one sentence of statement what this particular research is on, and then all the others should be about the highlights of your work. So whatever you have received, very important data, important results, important statements should go into conclusions. And then the implications. You can mention the implications, what to be done in next by one sentence, 2 sentences. What should be done in the future, right, by others. So that will be very helpful for the other researchers, because then they have a statement saying, okay, this is the research gap that we should look into. So that is how we make the conclusion statement, conclusion section. And it should not be very long. Even 100 words, 200 words would be enough, because you are showing the highlight of your work. That is very important. So an editor would look at the abstract in general, and then the last part of the introduction. If all are good, then he will go look at the conclusions too. Then only it will be decided whether it is going into the next level or it is coming back to us.
Thank you, Madam. If you go back one chapter above from the conclusion, then most of the papers probably will have results and discussion or some kind of a chapter. And then some paper, there's a lot of overlapping between the results and discussion and the conclusion. Some people are, most of the paragraphs are repeating again in the conclusion. What would be your advice on that?
Yeah. Whatever we are writing, the repetition should be minimized. I would say no repetition, 0 repetition. would not like to read the same thing again and again. Just be a reader of your own paper, right? So if you are being a reader of your own paper, own manuscript, then you will feel like, okay, this is missing and this is too much. I'm saying this again and again. So repetition should be minimized, right? Most importantly, you can compare it with other studies, right? There are many studies. We are not the only one who does this particular research, right? That we need to understand. There are 100,000 of researchers in the world, maybe thousands of researchers in the world doing in the same direction, same kind of a research, right? So it is very important for you to know to repeat things, right? So that will again be a point for the reviewer. So reviewer is a reader, and remember he is voluntary reader. And that reviewer or the editor will give you comments not to penalize you or not to suppress you, but to improve your work. So you need to take the reviewer comments, editor's comments positively, constructively, because they are voluntary, constructive, voluntary giving comments to improve your paper. I am being an editor, you might submit an article. I know the author, I know, but I am not, in favor of you or, doing any harm to you. Most of the authors that are submitting papers into the international journals are, like whom we don't know. So we are not anything against them, but we need to improve them. If we feel like, okay, this study is very good, then we will give comments to improve that. Right? Even if we are giving negative comments, that is to improve your manuscript, and then you can submit it into a different journal. As he said, we are submitting a journal paper and it never gets accepted at the first time. I have, in my research life, I have more than 200 papers published. Only one paper I have been accepted right away. It's the only one paper, and I could not believe it because I never expected. It never happens. So it always go into major revisions, minor revisions. Sometimes 3 times it is being revised. So the students sometimes they are very upset because revising, it never ends. Even sometimes they send it to me. I revise like 5-6 times. Right? So I have a student who sent me his manuscript recently, and the version 10 it says. So that is what we do. But in my case, I try to revise it as soon as possible when I receive. That is, I think, very important in terms of the context of the students. Because if we as supervisors take so long time to revise papers or give comments, then they will also feel like, okay, my paper might not be very interesting to him, and they will be discouraging. So that is not good. So we must encourage their writing, encourage their efforts. So I tend to revise the papers that is sent to me by within few days. That is, it depends on the time, but if I have to revise a paper, I start my work at 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning sometimes, because I would like my student to be encouraged in revising that paper too. So that I do. So time is, given quite a lot to a student is not a waste. It's always beneficial. So that is how I became a researcher, because my supervisors put time on me. And if I put time on them, they will become good researchers. Likewise, we need to, take this journey. Otherwise, it will be not very enthusiastic for the students. That's my belief. Yeah.
Thank you very much. And this was so illuminating so far, and I thoroughly enjoyed this. And my question is to do with, I'm a very amateur researcher. So I've just finished last year I finished my master's. And like you said, I've taken like small sections of it, not even chapters, like small, maybe like a theme or two, and then written a couple of, I've presented a couple of times, but I don't have that many publications, very many. And so my question is limited to the, is about the productivity, like how do we plan our work? Because we have these, I'm also interested in lifelong learning. So whenever I get an opportunity to learn something, I go for it. For instance, I'm learning Corpus, something like that. And then so how do or how do we as amateur researchers or who are beginning this, have more discipline, or like plan our time, prepare, and then also have our own personal life, because
Yes, exactly. Exactly. That's very important. Yeah. The very first thing is time management.
so how do I am really bad.
In my case, time management is from proper planning. So I plan for the day. I'm not planning for weeks or like months. I don't have plans that long. So, and sometimes I have seen some people advise that you need to plan the next day when you go sleep in the previous day. But I don't have such. When I sleep, I sleep. That's it. I don't think about anything else. So but in the beginning of the day, in the morning, I start going to the laptop and then looking at the emails that I got, and then I finish right away replying to all the emails. So whenever I am in the laptop, I reply all the emails right away, so that I have time to other work. Otherwise, then I have things to reply and the other stuff and so on. But if I have to develop a research concept, then I need time to read. So these readings, most of the time I do during night or in the morning, easy. Because when you go into your desk in the morning to your office, then I know I can't do anything else other than administrative stuff, procurement, and then solving the problems of the students. So nothing else. From 9 o'clock to 4 o'clock, answering calls, all these, right? So you need to have time, at least at night or morning, you devote that time to think about new research ideas. Read a little bit on your, in the field that you are interested in. So reading helps quite a lot. For that, you need to manage time. So cooking will be later. So that I manage time, I go to sleep at 9:30 night, but I most of the time I wake up at 3 o'clock. Most of the time. Even if I have some deadlines, proposal deadline or something else, application or something else, then I wake up little earlier too. So likewise, I manage the time for that day so that I finish most of the work within the day. So that is what I do. But when you go on a conference visit or something, then the next time, when you are back, you will be full of all these emails, answering and all this stuff. But managing time for the day would be, is my way, but you can't, I don't know whether it can be taken up by somebody else and apply it into yourself, but you need to practice in a way to manage whatever comes to you. Because I was not this busy when I was her age, right? But still, I had a habit of replying emails right away. or if I miss a call, I would return it right away. So that we need to practice. So planning, time management is very important. And then always important, the other aspect is managing stress. So, what I do is travel. So I take time. I take time with my research group. I travel. I take time with my family. I travel. So that is not very often, but at least 3 or 4 times per year. So that you should have, or at least in the weekend, half a day of the weekend, you should go somewhere with your family or be with the family. So researcher, being a researcher, managing the life with the family, life with the friends is bit hard, but that is that it should come from you. You must do it. You must do it. So otherwise, you will be very disappointed in a time at a time, and you will be very stressed out. So that should not allow to happen. And being a researcher, your mindset should be very calm and very open. You should not have a lot of problems in your mindset. Otherwise, it will be very hard for you to think about new aspects, think about new research, write to collaborators. So even my collaborators always say, no, I reply with no time, because I have the respect to my collaborators. That respect we should have for everybody. Even my family members, even my collaborators, even my fellow students, my fellow other colleagues, we should have that respect. So in my case, some might think that we are so workaholic, right? All of us are same, maybe because they got it from myself. So even a few days ago, I sent a text to my students. We have a group. So saying, I'm very sorry that I'm putting a lot of workload on you, because I saw FB post saying how the supervisors are treating the students when they are doing their PhDs in different countries. Some countries like in Europe. In my case, I was always asked to take leave on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and then summer holidays. But I never did. Sometimes I did, like I take long holidays and then go walk. But if they need holidays, I let them take. I never ask them to stay in the lab and work. So most of the time, my students, they work for like 3 weeks and then take 1 week holiday. So I'm not restricting them. That is very important. We should not have been restricted by anybody else. If we are restricted by anybody else, suppressed by anybody else, or given a lot of workload and asked them, given a lot of timelines, then the productivity will not be there. So my secret is that. So they work. I asked them to work, do the lab experiment from 8 to 4:35, and then write. No lab experiments afterward. Writing is very important. As she said, whenever you do something, in the night or in the morning, you should write it back. Otherwise, you will forget things, right? So that the small thing that you forget might be very important for the other researcher to follow. So that is why it is very important for you to write right after you do the experiments. And even I tell them, when you are a student, you do read quite a lot of papers for your thesis. So for a thesis, like more than 100 papers, definitely you read. So why you are writing a literature review chapter in your thesis? Why not you make it to a review paper? Convert it into a review paper. In my case, I asked them to write a review paper first and then make it to a literature review, dilute it, like descriptive, make descriptive sentences and make a literature review chapter. So likewise, we need to find the tactics. That is very important. So finding tactics means you are working on it. So that for that also you need time. So time management, learning new things is very important. Even like bibliographic reviews nowadays very common. So when we have Scopus, you can search many things, right? You can search about the authors, you can search about the keywords, right? You can search about the number of papers and many more. So these are huge databases. And only few universities have the access to Scopus, right? My university has access. I think here also you have the access. So you can do bibliographic reviews. And now there are open softwares for those things. So learning new things is very important. Just by being a researcher, if you think, you are the researcher now, you have published this many, and then you ask your students to write your paper, right? That is not going to work. You need to search and learn. Okay, I'm searching and learning. When I search when I read new papers, I see many new way of presenting things, figures. So I take a screenshot and then pass it to our group and say, look at this. This is new way of presenting some information. So you should also work on this, gaining new knowledge. So I always tend to send them to workshops, learn new things and get other fellow colleagues to teach them 2 hours at least to teach them, and they will think new. Not all, but at least 1 or 2 will think new. So that is what I do with my research group. So they also that being a researcher at this level, I only do research, nothing else. Many people think like that, but I do cooking too at home, and I do planting, stuff at home. She's a good farmer, and she brings us seeds and all this stuff and organic, sprays and
I'm
everything.
enjoying my time with 3 kids.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So, I have only one. He also has one, but she has 3. So we are managing many different things, not only research. And we do work on a lot of social media stuff. I get a lot of blames, and then I had to reply all these things. We do all these things in a day. So we all have 24 hours, but the way we manage time is the secret. So if we can, improve how we manage our time, that will give the productivity. So that's it.
Can you name some of the softwares which you mentioned about the literature review for the systematic literature reviews?
Yeah. Bibliographic reviews, Scopus, you can get the data from Scopus, and then you can use like VOS Weaver, I guess. That's a new one which is being used by many people because it is open source. Having an enthusiasm to learn programming, R is the best. So I would say all of the students, graduates, undergraduates, graduates, researchers, graduate students should learn R. Yes, because that is a platform for many people in various different disciplines to come together and work out, right? So I know this university is very good in all this programming and giving new things. Yeah, she is very good in I know that very well. So that I think we should give that to all the universities, all the science faculties, technology faculties, of course, engineering faculty, they learn, but science faculties, I would encourage them to learn art. That is a good platform, even for figure, graph preparation, whatever. You can think of many new ideas and creativity improves if you use this kind of a software. So that is one advice that I can give, being the FGS, maybe you can give workshops, arrange workshops, and even the other universities, I think they should bring up our learning, platform to students. That will be very helpful. Many universities abroad, they tend to put students for this way, and then one of our um, not negatives but lacking research field is modeling. Engineering faculties do quite a lot of modeling, but not the science faculties. So science faculties should start doing modeling. Modeling means it is not one subject area. It's for multidisciplinary, right? It might be statistical modeling. It might be water resources modeling. It might be climate change. It might be plant stuff, soil, flow and transport, reactive modeling, and so on. So these are the new research fields that world is going. So those things we need to introduce to our curriculum. We are, I'm not criticizing, but I'm saying it openly. Most of our curriculums we teach in our universities are very old, very backdated. Because we teach what we know. That's the only thing we teach. Right? We don't tend to learn. We are not enthusiastic in learning something new and teaching it. But as academics, as researchers, we should do it so that kids will or the students will learn new things. That is very, very important being an academic. So behind that, you need to read. If you don't read, if you are not in current science, then you will be teaching the very old stuff that you have learned 20 years ago. But the world has gone very far. So that is one idea I wanted to share. So these are some of the aspects that I always give to young researchers. They should understand that to use maximum time that you have. Everybody has the same time period in a day, but you need to maximize it. And then you need to have a hobby. Otherwise, you will be stressed out, right? So researchers should not have a stressful mind. If not only you will be success. And especially mentor support is very important. Even now, I am getting mentor support. Whatever I write, I would share with some senior person and ask for advice. So that we should have, and that will mentor support will not only be from a senior person, can be a colleague too. Right? When you write something, if you share it with somebody and ask for comments, because when you write, you think that because you know what you are writing, but the reader doesn't know what the context that you were doing the experiments and so on. So only third party can realize it, right? So they can question, okay, so what? That is the question always comes when you start writing. So what? Right? You must ask it from yourself. When you write a sentence, okay, so what? Whether a reader would understand. whatever you have written. So that is one thing. And then proper planning is again very important. And the most important thing is no shortcut to success. It is always the hardships. So every one of you has a story, have a story. I know that, right? So that story you need to share it with others. That is very important. Share it with your students. They will start learning at least one point from your story. Because all of us here, all of us listening, have different type of context, different type of backgrounds, and different types of hardships. So these hardships, I have listened to many people. I have talked to many people. Even a person who is sweeping the road, sweeping our lecture hall. I have many things to learn. So talking to people will give you a lot of experiences. That is also very important. And in my case, I recognize team members. That is, I think my team is my strength. So if my team is not satisfied, not going through many different issues, then it will be a big problem. So I always try to recognize them, try to keep them satisfied, keep them enjoying the work. Otherwise, they will not perform well. And we need to be responsible and strong. We as researchers, everybody should be responsible. This is what happened to this country, right? We are not responsible in anything that we do, right? Accountability and responsibility. That is very, very important. If I am accountable for what I have done, or what my student has done, I had to be accountable. Then I should be responsible too. So that should be with us. So when he was attached, he was selected to my research group in IFS. The next week, he was in the newspaper with this kind of photograph. He was in a protest. And everybody in IFS were very upset. They were saying, "Oh, a union guy has come into IFS." Right? And they were running to me and asking, "What are you going to do? This guy was in a protest and now in the newspaper." I said, "That is the part of the university life, right? And if you are not protesting against, some kind of an activity or wrong decision, then there is no point of view, right? So I will manage him. Don't worry about that. IFS name will not be, damaged because of it. I think you should be in a mode that you are showing the that you are dislike, or if you are against something, you must show it, right? If not, there's no point, because you should talk the truth. You should stand for the truth. So that is also one thing. So at that moment, I took the responsibility for him. So if I didn't take that responsibility, then he will be suffering because people will, give a lot of stress on him. So these are some of the, tips that I can share with you from my experiences. So you tend to be unique. That is very important. We are unique. All of us are unique. We are not like somebody else. So that uniqueness, you must show it. So that is what we are not doing. That is what being done by the other countries, people in the other countries. They are unique, then they show it. And we are also unique. Every one of us are unique, and we must show it. So, and because of that uniqueness, we must not suppress, or we must not restrict somebody else. then only we can get the maximum out of them. Right? Because my research proof, there are many different types of students. Some are very slow, very unique, very slow and working very slowly, writing very slowly, and some are writing very fast. So, if I don't manage them properly, then they will get upset, right? So when you recognize the team members, you should think about it. There is a person who publish always, but there is another person who writes very slowly, but doing a lot of experiments, helping a lot of other people, helping the procurement and many things. So we have to recognize that person in that way, and we should manage as supervisors. So I don't like to call as a supervisor. I would like to call as an advisor. Supervisor is a person who are looking at whatever they are doing and showing the errors and whatever wrong decisions and so on. But advisors are people who are changing the pathway of a student, right, or pathway of some person. So that is what we should do, right? Maybe you can share some of your experiences. I talk too much.
Adding to teamwork, really, as answers for your time management, if you are too busy and if you are working as a team, it will be an added advantage. Taking my experiences, I'm with 3 kids, and sometimes I don't have time to look at students' work, which is urgent for tomorrow or their work. So if you have active collaborators like a team, we can ask others help. Sometimes I do ask from Jacinta and Professor Metika, please have a look, this is urgent. So I'm confident at least one of our team members check the content so that I'm happy. So that's the way we manage our time. We can get help from others, which reduce the stress and the workload.
Dear researchers at our TCP premises, dear researchers, dear students, my peers, why don't you use this opportunity? It's a golden opportunity to ask questions. I think you can hear me.
Professor, I have a question. So this is related to publishing your research work. So once you're done with your research work, what is the process that you use to select a suitable journal for your work?
Yeah. Very first thing is when you start writing your manuscript, you should have a sense that I'm planning to go for this kind of a journal. That you can from the references or the citations. If you have citations in a particular field or particular journal, many citations in a particular journal, then you can try to think about that journal as a first try. Or if you think that your paper is very significant and novel, you always can try for a journal which has very high impact. Don't get upset by submitting to a high impact journal thinking that your work is not suitable for that kind of a journal. Because in some instances, your manuscript will be rejected, but you will get some good feedback, right? From that feedback, you can start improving your paper. So that is what we do normally. So we try to go for the most highest impact factor most of the time. Sometimes you get it rejected right away next day without even going into the reviewers. So the editor just reject it without giving any reason even. But then we are tend to go into the lower impact factor than that. But most of the time, what I'm doing is selecting one of the topmost journals and then try to get feedback from them, even reject. Then we improve the article based on the that rejection. Because at least they give one or two reasons why it is rejected. So based on that, we are improving. And sometimes we select multidisciplinary journals, but not multidisciplinary journals like nowadays we have like many military journals too. I never publish I never select journals where we don't know the publisher. Not very much recognized publishers, I don't go. So I always go for the recognized publishers like Elsevier, Springer, Willa Science, RSC, ACS, or something like that. Even a low impact factor of this kind of a publisher would be benefited rather than going for, not very popular publishers, right? That is very important. And sometimes I don't think about the impact factor much, but the quality of the journal. Because some journals are there, the impact factor is very low, but the quality is very high. So the impact factor depends on many different, like it is like H index, right? So H index we should not take to compare people, compare scientists, because H index differ from field to field. Right? It depends on the citations that you are receiving. So citations receiving for a cancer researcher will be very higher than citations received from a physicist. So that depends. So we should not compare researchers in different disciplines using H index. Similarly, you should not compare the impact factor of different journals, but the quality should be compared, right? So quality I am looking at, but not the impact factor. In some cases, like journals like Carbon, which is the very good, very top journal in material science, but related to carbon materials only. So that has a low impact factor than other material science journals. But when we publish our biochar research in carbon journal, that will be very, selected better. So recognized well. So that kind of tactics we must learn in publishing.
Yeah, to add to that point, actually, when you want to select a journal, one of the very first things would be looking at the aims and the scope of the journal. So then you can clearly understand what is expected by the journal. So once we examine this aspect, actually you can save a lot of time, because sometimes the manuscript will go to the reviewing process, and finally it will come to you after spending 1 month or 2 months that the aim or the scope is not matching. So recently we got one such rejection. Actually, we didn't look at that part a lot, because the subject was quite different for project work actually. So we got that answer. So then again the team discussed, and then we went for another journey. So it's very important to look at the aims and the scope. It is clearly written in the journal website.
Yes.
And some journals are managed by international reputed societies. For example, Soil Science Society of America, it is affiliated to different journals. So the reputations and the recognition in the field. So you can look at by looking at the journal homepage.
So this is just, I think it is shared, right? This is a map to show the citations of my work. This is little old though. This shows the recognition of a particular researcher, right? So when you even selecting a collaborator, right? Even selecting some colleague to collaborate with your work, or if you are planning to apply for some grants, these kind of information is important. So especially if you are trying to reach to somebody to collaborate with you, then look at the citations of that person. Look at the distribution of citations. That shows some gives some idea about that particular researcher. So this even shows that how important the citations are, not the self-citations, right? So we should not tend to self-cite ourselves much, but try to cite by other people than by citing by our own research. So these kind of map, if you add into your proposal, let's say you are writing a proposal to a grant, right? Granting agency. So this kind of map, if you apply this kind of map, add it to your proposal would be strong, because the reviewer will understand, okay, you are strong in some way. Right? So that kind of new things we must add into any sort of writing that we do, not only research articles, but also proposals that you write, reports that you write, whatever you are working on, try to create, try to think creatively, right? That will give you more, more attention from others. So just I wanted to show this because recently we were submitting a research proposal to Australian granting body. So there we showed these kind of data to show the strength of the different investigators. So that's also very important. We don't think on these lines because our research granting bodies are not looking at these things, but only the national development. They say national development, but nothing has happened from their research to the national development much, I would say. But these informations are very important. So always try to think new. That is very important. So you can get new ideas when you search and when you are in the science, reading science, Twitter. Twitter is a good platform to share science, even other social media too. So that is also very important. So sharing science through social media will also give you a good impact.
Since you reminded about this Sri Lankan of this natural results and all that,
Yes.
Like when we start a research, sometimes it will take some time, 5 years, 10 years to come up to that contribution level. How do we manage that? In Sri Lanka, they expect straight away 1 year, 2 year results and quick results. But it will take time when we try to start a new work.
Yeah, exactly. In that sense, I would say that you need to be little tricky, right? You need to be also, you need to understand the tactics. So in my way, if I frankly say what I do, if I go into new research field, let's say now I'm moving from biochar to microplastics, right? So I would start from a small setup, which I can do in here, Sri Lanka. So some research we can't go for big level because we don't have facilities. But from the facilities itself that we have, we can think of, but it's also again creativity. Think of a way of presenting it to the international level, right? So give you an example. We have a lot of dump sites in Sri Lanka. We have leachates that is been polluting the environment quite a lot. But landfill leachate, if you characterize it, many people have published. So there are a lot of information about landfill leachate. But we need to show something new in that. At least we should show something that has not been analyzed in developing countries. Or we need to go for kind of a simple modeling, which can be done by our own resources, what we have. So you need to be tactful. So likewise, you are starting, yes, you are starting, but you need to show that at least one publication or one step towards another direction to achieve that, to support it. So in the case of microplastic research, we started with very common adsorption experiments. That was what we can do. So we didn't have microplastic microbeads we needed. So I got it from Hasint when he was in Australia. So then I was thinking, okay, what can I do with these? By going through the normal routine, what can I do from this to have some novelty? So we can modify it, we can let it expose to sunlight and see the degradation and so on. So likewise, we need to be little tactful and find ways. So that will automatically come to you when you are in research, right? When we were in microplastic research, fortunate to us, but unfortunate to Sri Lanka, this express bird damage happened, right? So a lot of plastics came into our shoreline. So there were many people who were doing research on what is the distribution, how much of microplastics are there, and so on. But when you go talk to people time to time, there was one such person brought me an idea saying the disaster happened last year. Now 1 year passed out, more than 1 year, 1.5 years. Now the particles, the microplastic beads that we see are very small. So he just said it. Then I realized, okay, degraded, weathered, how do we assess how much of weathering has been taken place within this 1.5 years? So now I'm going in that line. So I'm now, I have a research to a student to calculate the weathering, how much of weathering has happened within this particular period. So that kind of factfulness and then creativeness we should have. So that comes when you are in research. You start thinking, you actually train your brain to think. So when your brain is being trained to think in research line, you always think about the new things, right? Oh, what is the novelty here? I would see. So that is what you need to train yourself. Train yourself to do research, train yourself to think, train yourself to write. So training is very important even for anything. To become a good lecturer, you need to be trained yourself, right? To talk to people, just like Professor Ajit Alvis, he trained himself, right? We can't be like Professor Ajit Alvis talking to people. His PR is in a superb level. When he talks to people, it's very convincing. So that is what he's been trained by himself, right? So we need to train ourselves whatever we are good at.
And another question. We talked about international collaborations. So how do we write to collaborators and ask or like inquire about possibilities of collaboration?
Yeah, just email.
Just see.
Just email. So
So it doesn't matter how there are other senior person.
no. When I wrote to my collaborator in Korea, I was just joined as a researcher at the IFS. So that came up because, you know, he wrote to me previously asking me to be his postdoc. And I refused. I told I have to go back to my home country, so I can't. But then when I was here, when I took my first job, we had some difficulties because we didn't have some advanced instrumentation for characterization of her material or her soil. Then I wrote to him saying, you know, you might remember me. I was this person who you sent me an email. I'm now, you know, being a researcher in this institute, but I have these kind of difficulties. Can you support? So we can just openly say that who I am, you know, my level is this. Can you support us? Can we be collaborators? Can you do some help for us? So likewise, then if they agree, then they will be our collaborators. But we need to keep that trust. We need to keep them, you know, in our papers, right? We need to give them that, whatever the acknowledgement, whatever their contribution, depending on their contribution, we need to give their proper recognition. That is very important. So with that trust, you can go very long distances. So I have written to, you know, like, you know, these collaborators from many countries are because of I'm writing to them, asking, you know, I have this issue. Can you support to characterize my material? Right? I can send it to you. Then if they have enough grants, they do it. Then if not, they will definitely tell us, you know, I don't have money or I don't have students to do it and so on. So that collaborative network we need to develop by writing. You know, just simple email. You write with your profile link, maybe. Yeah. So most of the researchers that I'm collaborating were when I was very, you know, low level as a researcher, very young researcher, but still I keep going with their collaborations because of that strong link. So it doesn't matter the level, right?
As one of the examples, we were referring to published articles by an author who was at Stanford University.
Oh, yeah.
So we were struggling with modeling during my master's studies, and really it was hard to understand the things given in that paper. But we needed to extend our research, to publish our research. What we did was we wrote that corresponding author and we replied back and agreed to correct our paper. With the support of him, that paper was published in high impact journal, ACS journal. That was one of the best achievement I had during my master's degree.
So it's, you know, like you need to be open, right? Because I couldn't even, I didn't know how to solve her problem, right? It's anybody, you know, we all are not the best people in that particular field. So I was not, it was not possible for me to solve her problem. So I referred to a local researcher and we didn't have any answer for that. Then we went to that person in Stanford University. He was very helpful. And then later on, I started collaborating with him for many papers. Because then you know, sometimes there are things like that. They have research ideas, but they don't have students to do. because they are students, they have to fund, right? But here we have volunteer students coming up. So the research ideas we can always work out. So he was asking me, I have a good research idea. Can you have a student to do it? Then I said, okay, why not? Then we were working on, based on her research, we were working on serpentine soil in Mars. So Martian soil, while we are not getting any organic carbon from the rovers that has been sent to Mars, that we developed the hypothesis and we worked out. So we have published a few good papers, right? So that is possible when you are open.
To that point, actually, when you're seeking international collaborators, you can show your strength, your commitment, your courage. You can actually put in your email a nice word, and also I think it's very important if you can copy your email to a senior colleague. So, for an example, when I was looking for international collaborators, I copied with Professor Nitika. Then probably she writes a few words. That gives a kind of strength or give you a courage to international author to trust that. And very important that you can simply write that I can dedicate a lot of time for preparing tables. For example, they are actually international. I mean, top researchers. They are quite busy, and they can't. They don't have much time to prepare tables and schematic diagrams because we need to spend a lot of time for preparing tables and seeking information, gather, collect information and prepare tables. And especially preparing this schematic diagram, it takes a lot time. And we need to use some graphical softwares and all. Probably the senior colleagues, they don't know how to use those softwares and all. So in that case, we can emphasize that we are fine to do these type of tasks, or we can nicely prepare the reference list and all. As juniors, we can say all these things. Being open is very important, and explaining all these things.
So thank you so much. So we are running out of time. The researchers at the TCP premises. This is the opportunity for you if you have any questions to clarify here. Our team is there. You can reach them to ask any questions.
May I ask one question? There's a perception, and maybe had that perception as intact at the time, that when we put Sri Lanka at the address, that when the paper receives from Sri Lanka and CK, the editor takes the decision, okay, how can they do this type of work? And, now, you mentioned 3 reasons, the cover letter and then highlighting those days, I'm not sure exactly, but do you think that's still a problem?
No, sir.
Editors don't think.
No, I don't think we have anything to do with the country name now.
Name, address.
No,
Okay,
no,
you don't
no,
have
no.
that part.
No. But it will be beneficial if you have a team of scientists outside. But that you are publishing by Sri Lankan affiliation. No, we have a few publications even recently.
No. Once you come to different questions, that particular address there, now you're starting yourself from an address, maybe say university.
Yeah.
Then when you say, okay, this university, barrier to cross.
I don't think there is a big problem like that, but it will be beneficial to have somebody senior. Anyway, it will be beneficial for your quality improvement. That you can get it. See, nowadays there are many publications are going up, from Sri Lanka, and they are published without any harm. Yeah, so I don't think there is a big problem right now.
Last questions for me. Actually, sometimes we don't know the art of doing something. And sometimes we don't know the way or scientific procedure behind that. So is it an art, science, passion? No, passion when we consider publishing an art.
It's the art. Yeah, and that art can be gained by anybody by practicing. Practicing is the most important. So that is what I always give it to my students. When I recruit them, I give few papers to them and ask them to read one paper per week and then write your own abstract for that paper. So then they start training themselves to summarize, because anybody can write descriptively. But papers, when you publish papers, they should be very concise and right to the point. You can't write a lot of descriptions. Descriptive writing is not very good in scientific writing. So for that training, you need them to train summarizing things. So summary writing is very important, so that you write things in brief. So that is why students are very bad in writing abstracts, but writing the paper is good, because they can write whatever they like. And even writing theses, they also always writing the thesis with, like 100 pages and so on. But when it comes to a paper, it's only 30 pages maximum, and with 8 figures plus tables. So the text is very, very brief. But you need to understand the point is there, right? So summary writing is very important. That needs training. So writing is an art, but the training will make
Valuable and rich conclusion. It's incumbent upon me to express our sincere gratitude and appreciate our for your scholarly. Would like to express our thanks for their valuable contribution. So I said, just to express my thanks to all. So dear researchers and students, we will meet again at the next research lounge, which will be held on January 2023. Until we meet in our next lounge, take care and goodbye to all.
Thank you. Thank you very much.